Hey folks, before we dive into the nitty-gritty of this machine, I want to make it clear that I'm not here to hype a product I never used. I'm here to help you decide if the Laguna Revo lathe actually fits the work you plan to do. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The biggest hesitation I hear from people in the shop is the fear of spending a few $100s on a bench lathe that either won't turn the size of material they need or will be a nightmare to adjust day after day, and that's exactly what I'm trying to address. First off, let's set the stage for the category. A 1.5 HP bench lathe in a 110V package sits in a sweet spot between the tiny hobbyshop machines that can barely handle a 2-inch stock and the heavy-duty 2 HP, 220V models that require a dedicated circuit. The Laguna Revo is marketed as a ready-to-go lathe with a sliding headstock and a motor that claims to keep torque even at low speeds, thanks to a pulse-width modulation drive. In practice, that means you can go from a slow 50 revolutions per minute turn for a big, soft piece of wood down to 4,200 revolutions per minute for a quick finish on a small metal rod without swapping belts. That range alone covers most hobbyist projects, turning a wooden chair leg, machining a small aluminum spacer, or even doing a quick propeller blade for a drone. Now, who should actually consider this machine? If you already have a modest workshop with a sturdy workbench and you spend at least a few hours a week turning wood, plastic, or soft metals, the Revo's adjustable height legs give you a more ergonomic stance than a fixed-height bench model. The sliding headstock lets you move the motor closer or farther from the workpiece, which is a real time saver when you switch between a 4-inch turning diameter and a 10-inch piece of pipe. For a beginner who's just starting to learn lathe fundamentals, the infinite electronic speed control removes the guesswork of changing pulleys. You set the RPM on the dial, and the motor does the rest. That can make the learning curve less intimidating and keep you focused on tool placement and feed rather than belt changes. On the flip side, if you're a professional machinist who needs to run a continuous production line, or if you plan to turn heavy steel billets regularly, you'll probably find the 1.5 HP motor underpowered. The Revo's torque is impressive for its size, but it still taps out around 2,150 revolutions per minute under load, and you'll notice the motor struggling if you try to cut deep threads in hardened steel. Also, the machine is built for a 110V outlet, so if your shop already runs a lot of 220V equipment, you might end up juggling two different power sources, which can be a hassle. Let's walk through a couple of real-world scenarios. I spent a weekend building a set of wooden table legs for a custom dining table. The legs ranged from 6 to 12 inches in diameter, and I needed to taper each one smoothly. With the Revo, I set the speed to around 250 revolutions per minute, locked the sliding headstock in the middle position, and used a standard 3-step pulley to get the right belt tension. Because the motor holds torque even at that low speed, the wood didn't grab or stall when I applied a heavier cut. The result was a clean, even taper without having to stop and retighten a belt, a small but noticeable boost in workflow. In a second test, I turned a 1-inch aluminum rod to make a set of small gears for a robotics project. I cranked the speed up to 3,500 revolutions per minute, which the Revo handles without whining. The electronic speed control stayed steady, and the cutting tool didn't chatter. The only hiccup was that the tailstock, while functional, felt a bit loose when I applied side pressure. It didn't affect the final part, but if you're doing precision work that requires a perfectly rigid tailstock, you might need to spend a few minutes tightening the lock each time you set up. One practical strength that often gets lost in spec sheets is the machine's footprint. The Revo measures just under 2 feet wide and 4 feet long, and the legs fold down a few inches for storage. For a maker who shares a garage or a small apartment workshop, that compact size means you can pull it out for a project and tuck it away without sacrificing too much floor space. The sliding headstock also reduces the overall length of the carriage needed to reach the full 15-inch swing, which is something you won't notice until you actually try to turn a longer piece. A hidden trade-off shows up when you consider the accessories that come with the lathe. The package includes a basic set of 3 jaws, a live center, and a small set of cutting tools. Those are fine for a starter kit, but if you already own a collection of specialized cutters or need a larger chuck for bigger blanks, you'll have to purchase upgrades. The cost of those add-ons can push the total investment closer.